Hi guys, I just wanted to demo some code that I've been working on as part of my Kickstarter project, Better VBA. It's the VBA grammar component of it, which will allow, eventually, doesn't right now, allow Visual Studio to understand VBA code, syntax, right? I'm using a library or a component called the Irony Language Development Toolkit, or something similar, and you can see here that my class VBA Grammar extends the base grammar, and basically everything I've added is the expression of the VBA language, which is, you can see, is a lot of lines of code, and I won't go into any detail on it because it's relatively straightforward and quite boring, but rather I wanted to show the state of it and how it actually works. And the Irony frame, and like I said, Visual Studio this is not yet integrated with Visual Studio, but the Irony framework comes with a Grammar Explorer, which allows you to run your grammar and test it, basically. And it tells you over here the terminals that it's found in your language and your expression, which basically correspond to keywords and symbols, and you'll recognize a lot of those in VBA. There's actually a lot that I discovered that I never use, but they're all in there. And then over here, non-terminals is basically how you can put those keywords or terminals together into larger statements and blocks and methods, and eventually the entire source file. And so you can see that all in here. Now the way that Irony works is it takes your grammar and creates a finite state machine, and you can have a listing of all the states, and there are where are they? 749 at the moment. That goes up and down as I modify the code, and that it took just under 300 milliseconds to actually take my grammar and create that finite state machine. The next tab over here shows you any errors, and there are a couple of errors remaining. I've removed the majority of them. Basically the error is telling me that there's an ambiguity in the grammar I've expressed, in which the parser could travel down more than one path, and it doesn't know which path it should go down when it's in a certain state and given a certain input, so it makes it just establishes a preferred or a default option. Cool. So the actual interesting part is it allows you to test your grammar against actual source code, and I have some that are prepared earlier to drop in here. Now this is code that I actually use, and you can see here that it is all coming up black, which if I click pass it says syntax error, and that's because I haven't included this part of a class declaration. If you export a class from like Excel, it will give you this header part, and I haven't included that in the grammar so far, but you can see that when I remove that, it all starts getting pretty. And if I click pass again, it does tell me that there's still one error, and that's because in the code that I've written I'm using it allows you to run a for each loop against your class by including that attribute declaration there, which is a workaround which people may be familiar with. But if I remove that, so basically at the moment my grammar doesn't allow you to write attributes anywhere else but at the top of the body, but I will need to include that possibility in the future. So that now passes in 9 milliseconds with no syntax errors. Cool. And you'll see a new addition to the window, which is this module component, which represents the root of the parse tree, and a parse tree is just when it takes your source code and sort of like processes it, and so the module represents the highest level, which is the entire source file itself, and the components of that module is a header and a body. And if I expand the header, you can see that the header consists of multiple class attributes, and if I highlight the top one, you can see the class attribute consists of the attribute keyword, followed by an attribute type, followed by the equals, followed by the value of that attribute. So if you can see, I'm clicking on this and it's highlighting it over here where it's actually found that in the source code, which is very handy. You can see that, and it tells you what kind of things are. Let me qualify that a bit more. So attribute, it's saying it's a keyword. Over here it's saying that VB name is a keyword, it's saying that equals is a symbol, and that the array list part, this thing over here, is actually a quoted identifier, right? Because it's an identifier that's within quotes. Cool. What else do we want to show or say? Okay, so my grammar will allow you to write, well, the goal was, as you can already see, there's already some falling short of that goal, allow you to write all valid VBA syntax. And so it should allow you to write anything that you could write in VBA and VBA would be happy with. And there's already two cases that I need to solve, one which is probably relatively easy and one that will be very difficult. And that is, well, the easy one will probably be the attributes that occur, the one I deleted down here. That should be relatively easy to include. However, if you were to write something like hash if true, then else hash and if, this would be perfectly valid VBA code. However, if I click pass, you'll see it comes up with a syntax error, which occurs right here. And the reason why that is, and I mean, this would be relatively easy to include in the grammar as well, but you could easily write something like that, where the conditional compilation actually surrounds or partly surrounds part of this method, which actually becomes very difficult to express in a grammar by itself. And so I haven't yet. The way that I plan to solve it is to basically modify the irony framework so that you can have subgrammars or chain the grammars together, because these conditional compilation statements are effectively a preprocessor. Takes the source code, executes the preprocessor, cuts bits out, conditionally allows part of it, and then passes the output of that into the actual VBA parser. So that's something for the future. So if you're writing code where this kind of thing intersects with a method, you'll have a problem. You can write code like that. Let me just tidy that up. And oops, then enter. So conditional compilation outside of method bodies and type declarations, any other sort of blocky type things, that should pass fine. So that's all happy. Let me delete that. So that's sort of the state of the grammar. Now, why do you care? And that's really because you can run this code yourself if you want to. If you're interested and you wanted to get it, you can get a hold of this my grammar on GitHub, and you can get the irony toolkit also online on Codeplex, and I can post both the links to those. Get them, you can compile them in Visual Studio. At this stage I don't plan on providing any binaries, but if people shout and yell and really want it, I can find a way to get some binaries up there so that people don't have to compile it to actually see it running. So that's all I really wanted to show, so thanks for watching.